Welcome to the Audio Inc. Radio podcast, featuring interviews with the biggest names in rock and metal, hosted by Anne Erickson.
Get inked. Visit Facebook.com/Audio Inc. Radio, Twitter.com/Audio Inc. Radio, and AudioIncRadio.com for more ink. Whew, that's a lot of ink. It's AudioIncRadio.com.
Yay, I am very happy to be here with you. It's Anne Erickson on Audio Inc. Radio. And, you know, one of my favorite things about doing this and being in radio and hanging out and talking about music and being a part of the music industry, just one of my favorite things is when I get to interview a band that has meant a lot to me personally. Because, yeah, I mean, if I were to go back in time and tell little Anne that one day I would be interviewing members of Creed multiple times, I'd be like, no way. There is no way. I would not have believed it. And I feel that way about just so many great bands that I've interviewed. I just cannot believe it. Going back in time, I would have totally been surprised. But one band that always really meant a lot to me, and it's one of the first bands that I ever heard on the radio and ever really kind of was my gateway rock band into more rock music and then eventually into metal music. That band, wait for it, is Staind. I am a huge Staind fan. I'll never forget the first time that I heard all of their music. I mean, Mud Shovel, I don't think that's the first track I heard from them, but that was kind of their first big rock radio hit. But pretty sure it's not to be trite, but it's been a while. The first time I heard that track, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. Who is this? Who is that vocalist? Who is that guitarist? Of course, the vocalist was Aaron Lewis and the guitarist was Mike. And it was just like one of those wow moments. I fell in love with the band from the beginning. And it's funny, one of my first interviews ever was Aaron Lewis way back in the day. And I was so nervous, but I am very excited to have Mike from Staind on the show, which he's been on the show once before. And it was such a fun interview. One of my favorite interviews because he is very passionate about the music, which I love. And he's very down to earth and just a fun guy to hang out with and talk about music. And it's a great vibe with him. Very excited. Staind is actually back with their long awaited new record, Confessions of the Fallen. And what's cool is that this actually marks their first bit of new music in over a decade. Their first new record, full-length record, in more than a decade. And for a while, I was worried. I was worried about Staind because I love them. And then a few years ago, they got back to do shows and stuff like that. But this is the first time we get new music from them. And I've heard the whole record. It is awesome. It is classic Staind. And I love it. All right. Well, hey, if you don't subscribe to the podcast yet, shame on you. You are in the doghouse with me. I want you to do it right now. It's very easy. Just search Anne Erickson on Audio Inc. wherever you rock out a podcast. Hit subscribe and you'll be instantly notified of the next show featuring the biggest names in rock and metal music. If you are on Patreon, I would love for you to be a patron and you'll get special access to behind the scenes stuff and photos and access to my private Patreon page. Just hit up the link in the show description. It's patreon.com/Anne Autumn. And what else? What am I forgetting? Oh, I know. If you want to link up with me and chat with me online and give me an idea for the show or just talk music, something like that, you can hit me up on social media. Head to my website, itsmeanne.com. That's itsmeanne.com. itsmeanne.com to link up on all of my social media. All right, on to it. The main attraction. Great interview right now with Mike from Staind.
Hey, what's up? This is Mike with Staind. And listen to Audio Inc. Radio with Anne Erickson.
What is up? It's Anne Erickson with Audio Inc. Radio. And I am very happy to be here with the talented Mike from Staind. How are you?
Good. How are you today?
I'm great. And I mean, I'm happy because Staind is back, which I know you guys have been back for a while now, but now you're really back with the new record, which by the way is so good. I've heard the whole thing.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, listen, I'm happy to be back too. It's been a minute for us. So it's nice to have new music and to be working.
Yeah. So Confessions of the Fallen is actually your first record since 2011, right?
Correct.
Wow. So how does it feel to be back writing music after all that time? Was it really natural or was it kind of like weird at first?
Yes. I mean, listen, there was definitely, a bit of anxiety going into it. You know what I mean? We hadn't worked, in that capacity in a long time. So, and not having put out a record in that many years, it's got to be great, right? I mean, that was the one thing is like we kept saying, oh, this has got to be the best thing that we've done. I mean, it's got to be great. And, but once you kind of start working, you kind of forget about all of that and you just kind of fall back into it. And, then you finish it and you kind of lift your head up and listen and go, I'm really happy with this. So, and that's kind of what happened. So, yeah, and we kind of just fell back into it. But we did. This record was made a lot differently too than any other record we've ever made as well. Just for the simple fact, Aaron's always on the road. I had a lot of the songs written, and we put a lot of it together when we were on tour with Korn in 2021. I was able to actually, kind of get Aaron in a room and play him some of the songs, and get direction from him and what he wanted, and where he wanted to go. And it was really with that we were able to kind of, figure out, the direction.
What was your favorite thing about getting back with Aaron and the guys and writing the new music?
Exactly that. Just being able to be back together and, doing the band that, we started 1,000 years ago. It was, having, that time away and just being thankful that we're able to, go back and play these songs and still be able to create.
Well, I'm wondering, what is it like working with Aaron Lewis? Because I feel like he is the, I don't know, godfather of post-grunge or something. I mean, Stained in general. You guys, don't tell him I said that, right? But
Godfathers, really? Oh my God, I'm that old? Yeah, kind of. Anyways, go ahead.
Stained in general, you guys are like one of the pillars of the genre. But what is it like working with Aaron?
That's great. I mean, listen, I feel like we complement each other. In writing music and coming up with things, when I'm sitting there by myself doing it, like I'll rewrite a part, 6 times. Oh, what's the best? And you got to make a decision, as to what it is. But when you have somebody else that, you respect and you've worked with forever and able to bounce those ideas off of, it just makes, my job easier. And I feel like he makes what I do better, so, having that, trust and respect for what somebody does is, it's just a great feeling. And obviously, I mean, he does such a great job with, melody and lyrics. It's always exciting for me, even being a fan, of what he does, when I actually kind of get to hear where the song ends up, you know what I mean, at the end, when they're actually the melody and lyrics are on the music, so it's cool. I feel real fortunate, like I said, that we're back doing this again.
Yeah, I feel like it's a really good mix. Obviously, your guitar work and your songwriting with what he does vocally. I just feel like it's always kind of a perfect fit.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm real happy with it. And listen, obviously, Aaron's written some amazing songs as well that he's brought to the band. So, I mean, it's it's always great when that happens.
When I heard the first single off the new record, Lowest in Me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is classic Stained. I loved it so much. So tell me the story behind that track.
That was something that I had written on that Korn tour. Like I said, I had spent a lot of time, basically every day. I would just kind of set up my little Pro Tools rig and sit there and play and just, try to come up with different things. That was something that I wrote on that tour. And it was actually one of the last songs that we worked on. I remember I did all my guitar stuff. We have like a studio warehouse type of thing in Western Mass where we're from. And Eric was in. And I remember, going in one day with him before he was leaving, and we had a few more songs that we needed. And we worked on that one. And actually, it's funny. I think it ended up being the first 2 singles, because Here and Now is the next single. And I think that was the other one that we worked on, and just kind of put those together. And Eric sped it up. I was playing that riff slower. That was the one thing I remember. I think we changed keys too, to kind of put it in a good spot for Aaron to sing on. But yeah, that was one of the last songs that we put together.
Wow. So during Stain's hiatus, was there ever a time when you wondered if Stained would do shows again and write music? Because, you know, you have a lot of side bands and always cool stuff. And then Aaron Lewis has this country project. Were you ever a little bit like, gosh, you know, maybe we're done?
I don't know if I ever thought we were done. I just didn't know. There was really no time frame or no talk of when things were going to happen. And, Aaron and I would talk over the years and, just kind of stay in touch. And, I mean, he was just, so busy, trying to get his, not get, I mean, he was obviously very successful with his country career but he never stops playing, right? I mean, he's always on the road, working and, putting out music. So yeah, it was always like, where is this going to fit in, and listen, we were able to do it. We started talking about it. I want to say it was like 2018 probably. And then we did those shows in 2019, which was great. And we had a whole plan for 2020, but as you know, everything kind of shut down for everybody. But then we kind of picked back up and, here we are.
It appears that Stained is coming up on its 30th anniversary in a few years since you guys got your start in the mid 90s. Does that seem crazy to you?
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And, it was funny. So we just finished a tour with Godsmack and, and Aaron would kind of mention on stage how, Godsmack's big thing this year is, thank you for 25 years, of allowing us to do this. And, but when we played with those guys before either of us had record deals, and here we are, we just spent the summer with them, 25 years later or whatever, still being able to do it. So I think all feel real fortunate that, fans are out there still embracing what we're doing and allowing us to do it and wanting to be a part of it. So, yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, I remember like when our first record came out doing interviews and people would ask like, oh, look at Aerosmith. They're, in their 50s and they're like, I'm never going to be. I mean, who wants? Well, here I am. Guess what? And here Aerosmith is still playing and doing like supposedly their last tour. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's funny. I mean, I think for me, the same thing. Like when I was in my late teens, early 20, I was like, oh my gosh, when I'm older, I'm not going to go to rock concerts. I'm not going to be that person, and now I'm like, I'm going to be at rock concerts and metal shows until I'm freaking 90, until they put me in the grave,
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, listen, if it works for you, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. And I saw that tour. That was a great show. So, and what a great bill. That's cool. You guys played together before you were signed too.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, it was, like we'd go out to Boston and play with them and then they would come, play with us. We were from Western Mass, the other side of the state. And I mean, we've just, done a bunch of tours with them, throughout the years. So it's just great to be out with those guys again. I mean, I love those guys.
Yeah. And, you mentioned how popular like Godsmack and Stained and those kind of bands still are. Why do you think Stained and other bands from that era, the post-grunge, late 90s, early 2000s, are still so popular today? The genre really has longevity.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, even for me, I mean, I just thought there was just such great bands, and I'm not including us in that. I'm just saying they came from that era that, at least for me, that I still, love, and I think some of the music's great. And listen, I have 16-year-old twins, and it's weird. Like, I feel like even like some of their friends are like discovering those bands. It's funny. Like all these bands put down like Spotify, and you don't make money. And I mean, listen, all that's true. I mean, you make a fraction of a cent or whatever it is, but I think it does give people the ability to listen and connect to things that they probably never would if those things weren't there, and develop those, new fans and new fan base, I mean, half my kids' best favorite band is the Deftones.
Wow.
What I mean? And it's like, where does that come from? I mean, listen, other than that, they're amazing, and one of my favorite bands, but I don't know. I think it's just cool that people can get that music so readily and accessible. I mean, when I was a kid, I mean, I used to not eat lunch for a week so I could go buy a cassette tape at, the record store of a band that I heard of, and I wouldn't even know if I'd like it or not,
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I feel like the music of that era, now that you mention it, would always appeal to an adolescent. So it makes sense that even now they'd be getting into that music that's a few decades old.
Yeah, I mean, listen to Korn. I mean, it's just, I don't know. To me, it's just, to this day, there's so many bands that are just, great from that era. And we just played with Disturbed, another band, you know what I mean? It's obviously, doing better than ever, So, I mean, I don't know, it's great.
Definitely. That was at Soaring Eagle, right? In Michigan.
It was, yes,
Yeah.
correct.
I was so bummed. It totally was off my radar. And someone texted me that day and was like, hey, do you want to go? I have an extra ticket. And I couldn't. And I thought, how did I miss that? But hey, I got to see you guys with Godsmack, so I'm good.
Right on. Thank you. I'm glad you did.
Yeah. So what were the early days of Stained like? Not just with Stained, but the whole post-grunge scene, because I just think it's a fascinating time that kind of, after Pearl Jam and Nirvana and that sort of thing, like the bands that blossomed and like I said, are still really popular. What was that whole scene like?
So, listen, we always, so, you just said we were the grandfathers. I actually kind of consider us like, when I say the grandkids, because I feel like, Korn signed Limp Bizkit, and then Limp Bizkit signed us. You know what I mean? And then we were able to kind of get into that group and do, the Family Values a couple of times and open for Korn, which to me, I remember was like I'll never forget walking into an arena and just seeing their road cases with that logo on it for the first time. And like, oh my God, here we are, we're playing with this band. Cause I mean, that was, starting from Western Massachusetts in the mid 90s. If you wanted to play on a Friday night at a club, which we did, you had to play cover songs, And so, I mean, there was a lot of Korn songs we played, and Rage and Tool and Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam and that type of thing, And, but we always played original stuff, So when we were actually able to, transition from that to being an all original band, which was always our goal, and we always took that money from playing those gigs and we never put it in our pocket. We had a bank account, and that's what we paid for making our first record, Tormented. And we bought a van and a trailer, and, we would just, try to play wherever we could. And that's what led to us being signed, was, a friend of ours band from Connecticut, was opening for Limp Bizkit, and their record had just come out. And he called, I got home from rehearsal, I remember, and he called and was like, hey, it's 20 minutes. You'd be playing first. I'm like, yeah, we're doing it. You know what I mean? So that's, I don't know. It was a good time. And I one other thing, I know I'm being very long winded.
I love it. No.
Oh, okay. But I mean, what I remember for us when Dysfunction came out, and I've used this analogy a few times, and this is what stuck with me, was that we would go play these festivals every year. There was a few of them that we did. And I remember the first year our record came out, we were like in the parking lot playing, like outside of like the stadium or wherever the festival was. And then like the next year we came back and we were a little bit more successful. We had a couple of songs, sold some records, and we were at like one on the main stage. And then Break the Cycle came out. And then the year after we were, if not headlining, like second to last. You know what I mean? And I saw that within like 3 years. You could see that progression. And going to some of these same festivals and seeing that was how I saw our progression. Like, oh wow, this is really working. You know what I mean? We're not in the parking lot anymore.
Yeah, no, I was actually going to ask about that moment when you realized, wow, we really made it. But it sounds like that would be the moment.
The moment was, and I'll tell you, was Break the Cycle and 716,000 records in a week.
Wow. Yeah.
That was when I was just like, oh my God, this is, so yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. And you actually just passed the 20th anniversary of 14 Shades of Grey.
We did. Yeah, correct.
What do you remember about that period in Stain's history? Because you guys obviously had already broken really big with Break the Cycle. And then that was your follow-up, which I felt like was a softer kind of side of Stained.
Yeah, a little bit. And it was a hard, well, listen, so you have a record company after you have a song like It's Been a While who wants 12 It's Been a Whiles on your next record.
For sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was a really hard record to make. I mean, I remember getting calls from the president of the label saying, oh, you don't have it. You need more songs. And you need to, and I remember going out to NAMM that year, which is that music convention in Anaheim, and getting together with management, and they're just like, they want more songs. And we thought we had a record done. and it was hard to even get to that point. I remember it was a lot, and I called the band. I'm like, you guys got to get out here. So everybody flew out to Los Angeles, and we got into rehearsal space. And I remember we wrote Price to Play, and Aaron had written So Far Away already. We had that. And I think we wrote How About You, which was another song on the record. And, Price to Play ended up being the first single. And obviously everybody knows what So Far Away did. I mean, it's a staple in the set, obviously, since then. And, but yeah, it was hard. It was a hard record to make. It really was. I mean, just because there was that, you go and make your first record, and honestly, everybody left us alone. Nobody cared, and then you made the second one, and, it sold 1 million copies. Now people start to care, and they're a little bit more involved. Then after Break the Cycle, it was like, oh, like, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, you got to, try and duplicate that. And it's like, well, I don't know, that's going to happen, but I mean, we'll do our best.
Yeah, it's almost like, what a nice reward for doing well. Suddenly everyone's on your case and giving you a hard time.
It really was. I mean, it was, I'll tell this. I don't know if I've ever even told this. I remember when everybody came out to Los Angeles, we'd never really used any like outside writers or whatever. It's just kind of been us that have done it. And I remember they brought in the DeLeo brothers to a rehearsal spot that we had. They're like, oh, they're going to help you guys. And we were just like, oh, whatever. I mean, we love those guys. We'd known them or whatever. And, they came in, and I remember they were like, well, what do you guys have? And we played them the record, and they both went, why are we here? I'm like, I don't know. They sent you. They said they wanted you to be here. Like, they're like, you guys are good. So like, oh, thank you.
Aww.
So yeah. It was definitely nice. Challenging. It was nice. Yeah. Those guys are great.
Yeah, and I have to say that Price to Play is my favorite Stain song, even though you guys never play it live anymore.
Really? Is it really?
It was one of the first songs I played on the radio. So, because I started in radio right when that track was being released. Oh, and I love it. It's a great song.
Oh, right on. Thank you. Yeah, listen, we actually almost had it in the set this time and ended up not making it. So, yeah, it was maybe at some point.
Okay. Maybe if I go to some big like headlining Stain show where no one else is playing and you guys have to play for 4 hours or something.
4 hours. Oh my God. Not Bruce Springsteen. Come on.
Oh man. So, the question everyone wants to know, is Stain back for good? Can we expect another record, more touring, all that good stuff?
Well, there's definitely more touring. I mean, I know that we're trying to figure out what next year is going to be right now. So, I mean, there's definitely that. And I'm just kind of taking it as it goes. You know what I mean? I mean, listen, I love writing music in this band. I definitely get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And I'm very proud of, what we've done. And yeah, I would love for that to happen. So, we'll see how it goes, hopefully, right?
Yeah, fingers crossed. Do you have other projects you're doing too right now?
I mean, other than, I still, talk with Adam in San Antonio. So I know that those guys are going out on a tour with Theory and Skillet. But I'm not going to be able to do it. They've, have a replacement. Travis is playing guitar for them now, which has been great. I'm very thankful. He's doing a great job. But I love working with Adam too. I mean, honestly, I feel like I'm very fortunate to be working with two of my favorite singers.
Yeah, I know both bands are great. And I'm definitely hoping that Stained is back forever and ever and that you guys are playing out there until you're in your 80s. I want to see that.
God, I don't know about that. I feel like I'm 80. If that counts.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, Mike, it's been awesome hanging out with you. Congrats on all the success. And yeah, I cannot wait to see what the future holds for Stained.
Yeah, thank you. Me too. And as always, just really appreciate the support.
Mike from Stain, thank you for being a great guest on my show. And you're welcome back anytime. I mean, he is such a talented guy, and you would never know that he's in one of the biggest rock bands in the world because he's so down to earth. And it's just always really cool to vibe with him. And I have to admit, I am really happy because he said that they almost put Price to Play in their set list for this tour. They almost did it. And I can't tell you how much that track means to me. The last time I interviewed him, he said that maybe he thought it was a little bit out of Aaron Lewis's range. And that was kind of why it hadn't worked its way into the set for a while. But the fact that they are considering it, that's all I need, because maybe that next tour, just maybe he'll remember that I mentioned it and be like, you know what? People want to hear it. It was the first single off that record and it is a banger. It's a great track. So that made me happy. And of course, the fact that Stained is back makes me happy. Check out their new record, Confessions of the Fallen, featuring just, if you're a classic Stained fan, I promise that you're going to love it. It sounds just like classic Stained, but it's also just modern enough to sound really cool for the current era, if that makes sense. It's Anne Erickson on Audio Inc. Radio. As always, it's great to hang out with you. You are amazing. Don't be shy. Hit me up on social media. I promise I don't bite. Find me by just heading to my website, itsmeanne.com. That's itsmeanne.com. Itsmeanne.com to link up on all of my social media. Twitter and Snapchat at Anne Erickson, Instagram and TikTok at Erickson Anne. If you just want to go direct, be a patron on my Patreon page and you'll have access to my private Patreon and stuff like that. All kinds of different levels of subscriptions from $1 a month up. And it's just a cool way to hang out after the show. It's kind of an after party. Let's call it that. But you'll find the link in the show description or just head to patreon.com/AnneAutumn. And finally, check out my band, Upon Wings, at uponwings.com. New music on the way. And I feel really good because I've been releasing new music a lot more regularly. And that makes me happy because that was one of my big goals this year. We have 2 new tracks out, Deal Breaker and Bad Habit. Both of them are kind of dark trap pop. And now the new track on the way is very metal. Yeah, it's about time. Cannot wait for you to hear it. Check that out at uponwings.com. And if you don't subscribe to the podcast yet, I am not happy with you. Very upset. So check that out. Just search Anne Erickson on Audio Inc. wherever you rock out to podcast. Hit subscribe and you'll be instantly notified of the next show featuring the biggest names in rock and metal music. As always, thank you for being here. It means a lot to me. You are amazing. I really appreciate hanging out and you keeping me company and all of the support. Until next time, be safe, God bless, and we'll rock soon. It's Anne Erickson on Audio Inc. Radio.
It's Audio Inc. with Anne.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Audio Inc. Radio podcast. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. Get inked online at audioinkradio.com. I'm Anne Erickson for the Audio Inc. Radio podcast.